And it seems like there was, if you ask political analysts what went wrong with this election, was that the BJP party maybe focused a little more on this whole Hindu agenda, not so much really capturing this India growth story, right, where there was those that have been left out, whether it's from widening income inequality, you have unemployment that continues to be high, and rising living costs. I'm just wondering, what does this election outcome tell you about what's really happening on the ground in the economy?
Hi, morning. So interesting results. If you look at the tentative results on the rural point of view as well, rural vote share has fallen around 20% for the NDA versus what we saw in 2019. Clearly shows that the rural segment of the economy has not really thumbed up well for the NDA government. If you look at the spending pattern of NDA over the last 5 years, especially post-COVID, there's been a consistent fall in the rural and agriculture development spend overall as a percent of GDP, especially on the revenue expenditure side, which obviously meant that, with the kind of rural stress rather, we were seeing in the economy post-COVID, there wasn't much focus of the government in terms of doing a revenue expenditure-led spend on rural segment. And to that extent, I think the mandate has sort of shown that, probably the policy spend should have been partly focused on revenue expenditure as well, apart from capital expenditure.
Do you see, what does this mean for all these, reforms that he had laid out in his campaign, whether it's land, whether it's labor reforms? Do those take a back seat now, or can they still continue?
Oh, absolutely. I think, we are looking at a very different political reality. The equations are being very different, the power equation or the political compulsion that the party will have to now work with. I think it will lead to a policy rethink by the NDA. Thus, I think the factor market reforms, as you said, be it land, labor, agriculture, or capital, or even political reforms with regard to having consolidated elections going ahead, all of that will take a backseat. I think the fiscal consolidation will probably still remain on course in terms of direction. But there was a time especially post-exit poll, where there were talks about the fact that the excess bonanza that the Modi government has gotten from the Reserve Bank of India, which is close to around 0.4% of GDP, would probably be sort of saved by the government, and they'll target a very aggressive fiscal deficit consolidation in FY25 as they come in power. That looks to be a little different at this point in time. I think we will not be seeing a sub 5% fiscal deficit in FY25, and probably a bit of a skew towards revenue expenditure versus capital expenditure. But overall, I think fiscal consolidation versus FY24 will continue. And the broad macro contours are also looking to be, at this point in time, same for me.
Madhavi, David here. So just to pick up on one of your points there, we were speaking with the former RBI governor, Raghuram Rajan, I think it was about a week and a half ago at one of the conferences here in Hong Kong. And one of the things he brought up, which actually stood out to me, was India, the percentage of jobs that is being created in the agricultural sector is actually going up, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you look at India and where it wants to be, it becomes a bad thing. And I'm wondering what reforms you think should be in place to get the jobs where they need to be growing for people then to be spending?
I think the policy focus on manufacturing will continue, because that gives jobs for the less skilled labor and probably semi-rural labor, which is where you're seeing a lot of disconnect as well as discontent. So I think that way the policy thought process may not change. I think they will continue to focus on manufacturing-led job creation, because that is the best way to move people out from agriculture to a semi-vocational job skills. I think that will be the next focus of the government, of job creation, and out of agriculture to the industrial sector. And I think construction manufacturing continues to be big favored play there. That's what I'm saying. The policy shift may not immediately be very different from what it was in the past 5 years, but there could be some skewed spend which could give immediate relief to the rural class, or the K-shaped story that we saw in India.
Madhavi, and you mentioned the growth clip earlier. Do you think India, in its current, the economic capacity of the economy, do you think 8 to 9% growth is something that we should be expecting from this economy? And also, if that is the case, do you think that becomes an inflation problem, or do you think that is that a sustainable growth clip that we should be expecting?
See, we need to understand the fact that India will enjoy the fruits of past reforms, right? Last 10 years, the policy direction has been very clear. We can debate whether, it led to certain skewness in the economy overall. But I think next 5 years, we should be able to enjoy the past reform seeds. And apart from that, of course, the 7 to 8% plus kind of growth that we saw in FY24 or 8%, 8.2% growth that we saw in FY24 was largely technical, right? Because it was a GDP versus gross value add a differential that was being reflected because of lower spend by the government of India on subsidies. I think the trend growth, if I remove the noises, should be somewhere close 6.5 to 7% any which way, which I hope in the next 5 years should continue, hoping that, the reform-led growth story continues. Of course, we'll have to see how political equation really play a part there, but definitely a strong political capital changes a lot of dynamics for any economy. As of now, I think the growth trend is pretty much somewhere close to 6.5 to 7.5%. That doesn't change for me immediately. In FY25, we are looking at a 6.5% real GDP growth, which I think is lower than the street. But my sense is that you probably would see correction in FY25 because in terms of trade, a lot of things which were favorable in FY24 may not turn out to be as favorable for us, irrespective whichever equation would have played in the political space.